Hello, we are on page 28, lesson 5 problem set. Make sure you are turning to the correct page. You should be able to see this coordinate plane over here on the right. So the first question asks you to plot the following points on the coordinate plane to the right. So I'm going to start with the letter P. Okay, and I'm going to use a ruler, or you can use a piece of paper, whatever it is that helps you see where the plots are. Sometimes it helps to move it around so you can kind of see it. So right here it asks you to find the x and y coordinate. So the x coordinate is going to be 1 and 1/2, and the y coordinate is going to be 1/2. So x tells me that I need to move on this x coordinate right here. This is my x axis, and the top one is called my y-axis. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that I'm moving on the x-axis in blue, and I'm going to move all the way to 1 and 1/2. So that's what I'm doing. I'm moving to 1 and 1/2. And maybe highlighting it might help you. So I'm going to highlight that in blue, 1 and 1/2, so you know. And now the y coordinate is 1/2. So that means that I'm moving up on this green coordinate to 1/2. So I moved up, and this is 1/2 right here. So you see that I moved up to 1/2, and I dotted it, and that is going to be my letter P. Now the next one they asked me to draw is the letter Q. So they want me to move on my x-axis 1 and 1/2. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to move 1 and 1/2. So this is the line 1 and 1/2 right there. And it asks me to move up on my y coordinate 2 and 1/2. So I'm going to move all the way up to 2 and 1/2. And that is called my Q coordinate. Okay, notice that it's all on the same line. The next one I have is my 1 and 1/2. Again, my x coordinate is the same. And my y coordinate is going to be 1 and 1/4. So I'm going to move up all the way to 1 and 1/4, which is right here. So I'm going to label that coordinate R. And my last one is the letter S, and asks me to move 1 and 1/2, and I'm moving up to 3/4. And 3/4 is right here. So I'm going to label that S. And you're wondering, Miss Tran, how do you know the coordinates? How did you figure out, where 3/4 is, where this and this? So I'm looking at my x coordinate right here, and I noticed that the whole number 1 is divided into 4 units. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that means this whole thing is divided into fourths. So my first one is 1/4. My second one is 2/4, which is the same as 1/2, equivalent to 1/2. Next, I have 3/4, and then I have 4/4. 4/4 is equivalent to 1. Okay. Next, I'm going to have 1 and 1/4. Then I have 1 and 2/4. After 1 and 2/4, I'm going to have 1 and 3/4. And then I have 1 and 4/4. 1 and 4/4 is the same as 2. And then after that, I have 2 and 1/4. And after 2 and 1/4, I have 2 and 2/4, which is equivalent to 2 and 1/2. And after 2 and 2/4, I have 2 and 3/4. And then the last one, I have 2 and 4/4, which is equivalent to 3. Okay, so I'm going to highlight it so you guys can see which numbers are equivalent to each other. 1/2 is equivalent to 2/4, because if you were to divide 2/4 divided by 2 over 2, you would get 1/2. And same thing over here. 1 is equivalent to 4/4, because 4 divided by 4 is equal to 1. And then 1 and 1/2 is equivalent to 1 and 2/4, because like I said earlier, 2/4 is equivalent to 1/2. And then 2 is equivalent to 1 and 1/4. And 2 and 1/4 is equivalent to 2 and 2/4. And the last one, 3 is equivalent to 2 and 4/4. Okay, so that's your x-axis. Now, what if you want to label your y-axis, which is something you can definitely do. If you want to label it because it's easier for you, then you can. So I have 1/4, and then I have 2/4, and then I have 3/4, and then I have 4/4. It's not really fitting, so I think I'm only going to write the numbers that aren't there. So I have 1/4, and then I have 2/4, 3/4, then 1 and 1/4, 1 and 1/2, 1 and 3/4, 2, and then we have 2 and 1/4, 2 and 1/2, and 2 and 3/4. Okay. Now, I'm going to solve for problem 2, or problem A. Use a straight edge. It's just any paper you have that you can use straight or a ruler if you want to draw a line to connect these points. Label the line H. So I'm going to connect all of these points together. Excuse me. Sneezing all the time. Okay, so I'm going to draw a line as straight as I can, and I'm going to label that line H. That's what they wrote here. It's a fancy looking H. I'm just going to write H. Okay? And these little arrows tells me that it continues because we don't know how long the line will continue, so that's what the little arrows are for. Now that I did that, it asked me to connect these points and label the line H, so I did that already. I'm going to circle it so you know. B, in line H, x is equal to blank for all values of y. So if you notice, all of these values right here are the same for x. So x is all 1 and 1/2, 1 and 1/2, 1 and 1/2, and 1 and 1/2. So I'm going to write that down. They're all 1 and 1/2 for all the values of y. Now for problem C, it asked me to circle the correct word. And remember we talked earlier that perpendicular means 90 degrees. I'm going to write 90 degrees. And parallel means two lines that are the same distance but not touching. So that's what parallel means. So line H is line H is perpendicular to the x-axis. So this is the x-axis right here, and line H is perpendicular, meaning it creates a 90-degree angle. You see that? Right here and right here creates a 90-degree angle. So it is perpendicular. Line H is parallel to the y